But that family was marked for tragedy because the brother who had two ships sunk came home, and back at that time they called it battle fatigue, or maybe even shell shock back then. Now we call it PTSD. He was never the same again. He floundered around for over a year and were able to find happiness. He killed his other brother, who had been over in Europe, shot him with a gun right in front of his parents, and then he killed himself. And of course, their younger brother was already dead. So you have a story that could be made into a tragic movie. So it isn't just PTSD that we have today, but it was happening back then too. That was the best picture that we had of this sailing, until somebody in an audience here a few years ago gave me the actual negative. So now this is the way he's preserved, but otherwise I would have had to use this. Families are really helpful when they have something like that that can be preserved for Muskegon's history. Jack is here, Jack Hanner, and I've talked with him so many times. He is one of those many thousands of people who was sure that he was going to be in the invasion of Japan. He didn't know it was scheduled for November of '45, but he knew it was coming, and he was headed over there on a ship. On August 6, 1945, the word got everywhere and to his ship that the war might be coming to a close because we just dropped an atomic bomb. Well, he didn't know what an atomic bomb was. Hardly anybody did. But everybody realized it's going to be over, and we may not have to invade Japan at all. And 3 days later, the Japanese were very slow in reacting. We dropped another bomb on Nagasaki, and then 5 days later, Hirohito finally decided that's it. Rather than have the whole nation go down to ruin and be mostly killed off, he said, we'll agree to stop the war. So Jack knew he didn't have to go into battle. He was assigned to something called occupation duty. And he found out, like so many people I've talked to, the Japanese civilians were very pleasant. They were respectful. I think they would even bow for the Americans, and they would behave themselves. They were ready to die for their emperor, because the emperor was a god, of course. In their mind, he was a god. He told them, you must behave yourselves when we are occupied. And they did. Well, the danger wasn't over for Jack because he got on a ship. And there was an amazing typhoon, we call them hurricanes, off the island of Okinawa. And so many people suffered through that. I've heard all the stories about seasickness and thinking that they were ready to die. Several people have said, at first, I was afraid I was going to die. And then I was so sick, I was afraid I wasn't going to die. So you can relate, yes. So you went through that. Well, there's somebody else here too, who's not here tonight because she couldn't be. Jack's wife just passed away a couple weeks ago. She was in an organization called the Cadet Nurse Corps. It is not military. Very early in the war, in '42, President Roosevelt knew that we had a desperate need for nurses. He knew what was coming, and not only nurses for the war effort, but nurses to replace the nurses who were going from hospitals into the Army or the Navy. So a program was set up called the Cadet Nurse Corps. Any high school graduate woman could sign up, and they would automatically have 3 years of nurses training, free of charge. Not only free, but they would be given a stipend. They would live in a dormitory, and they would go through the 3 years of normal training. And then at the end of that training, they would have the possibility of joining the Army Nurse Corps or the Navy and be a full-fledged veteran. Well, Mary Sullivan, at the time, had a mother who was pure Irish. She had strong opinions, right, Jack? She absolutely forbade her daughter to go into nursing. Well, Mary, her daughter, was also Irish. Need I say more? She went through this program, and as you can see by the date, she was done in 48, which means war's over. But Uncle Sam did not hold back on the plan. He allowed all these ladies to finish their training, and many of them then went into the practice of nursing for a civilian career. I'm including all these ladies in the veteran program because they were part of the war effort. And they paid the price too. Jack has donated Arisaka 99 Japanese rifle to the museum. He never fired it, and finally said, I'm never going to fire this thing. I don't even have ammunition for it, so it's now on display in the museum. Mary wanted to donate her cape. You see, these ladies were all given 2 kinds of uniforms and a cape, beautiful red and black cape. So she donated that and had the satisfaction before she passed away that her donation would be in the museum in her name. Well, this poster explains the whole program. Young ladies were recruited for this, got a free education, and then could go in the military. Is Sue Arthur here tonight? Oh, good. I can't keep everybody straight. This is Sue Arthur, and this shows the actual uniform, beautiful uniform that they received. And she was in from 43 to 46. So when she finished her nurse's training, she also did not have the option of going into the service. And she used her training for other things. Remember Bud Yeager? Very famous columnist and writer in Muskegon. But he was in the Navy during the war. And at one time in the past, they suggested we should name the Causeway Park the Yeager Park in honor of his participation in Muskegon, but we wouldn't have it that way. It's the Veterans Memorial Park, like it should be. Oh, my uncle, that includes one of my 22 relatives who were in the war. He had a very ingenious way of beating the censors. You probably know that the men and women who wrote home could not give any information about where they were or what their activities were in a military nature. The censors would use a razor blade to cut words out, or they would block it out. Uncle George knew that ahead of time, and so did Aunt Jane. So this is what he did. He bought 2 maps that showed the British Isles and most of Europe. And they were about the size of a stationary tablet. And he told Aunt Jane, whenever I write you a letter, I'm going to take a little pin and stick it through where I am. If you get this letter, hold it up to the light and put it right on the map. Yeah, no censor would ever see that little dot. So he had a foolproof way. For a long time, the dot was right there in Northern Ireland. All of a sudden, it's England. And then it's France. So he was able to always know and let his family know where he was. go back to the second. Uncle George was a pretty special guy. I made sure that my children got to know him when he was an older man. He had a lot of memorabilia from Europe, from the other side. My children got to wear the German helmet, hold the bayonets. The thrill, of course, was to hold a Luger, which is probably thousands of dollars. I'm sure my cousin made out on that deal. Well, after meeting Uncle George, a few weeks later, one of my children said, "When are we going to go see that Nazi guy again?" One more comment. In his very later years, he loved to go fishing with his friend on Twin Lake. They'd always take a six-pack of beer, go out in the boat. It didn't matter whether they caught fish or not, because it was just a fun time to be out on the lake. One time, my Aunt Jane looked out there and saw the boat upside down. But then she looked closer, it was moving toward the shore. It didn't take her long to figure out or get the neighbors out there to notice that the boat came right up on the shore, flipped over, and here was George and his friend with a six-pack of beer. They saved the most important thing. Russ, where are you? Okay. Russ just turned 90 not long ago. Heading toward 91, I think. I learned all about the ships that he was on and included him. And a few weeks ago, I ran into him at Cozy Corner Cafe. We were talking about his tattoo, and this younger fellow from the Vietnam War came over. So I thought, here's a photo opportunity. So Vietnam, World War II. I'm not going to talk much about Joe Byerly at all because we had a wonderful speech here, and I can see his great display over there. Everybody knows about Joe, but I think it's too bad that he was killed in the war. And they had his funeral right here in Muskegon, so the whole family was grieving until the news got to his dad on the job. Your boy wasn't killed at all. It was a mix-up with the dog tags. So he left work right away, went home and told his wife that their boy was alive to become one of the most famous Muskegon people. But how many of you know his brothers? Brother John served with honor in the Pacific Theater. And I met his family. I never met John because he was already gone. And so was Brother Bill, who was over in Ireland and England. Well, when I met the family, I met one of the widows and I met the children. And they all said the same thing. Uncle Joe deserved every bit of attention he gets all over the world. Writing books, giving talks, everything that he did. But it's always Uncle Joe. Nobody knows our dads at all. That's why I'm mentioning that they served also. Have you ever heard of the WASPs? WASP, Women's Air Force Service Pilots. This is a Muskegon lady who spent the rest of her life here. She was in an organization for doing everything but flying overseas. She would fly planes to their bases where they would then be flown by men pilots. She would pull targets for the artillery who were practicing. Imagine pulling a target behind your airplane and you've got these teenagers just learning how to use their, some of them died. Some of these women didn't make it. This is their insignia, the WASPs. And this is a book that she wrote because she worked the rest of her career here in Muskegon at the airport. Here's another one with no information available, except if you talk to the family. Is Pat here tonight? Okay, yes, there's Pat. Pat knows a lot of information about her dad. It was never recovered. The Chronicle says there's no information available even today, but we do know that. It only takes a little bit of work to find out, so they're not just a name. He died in a part of the continent of Europe, in the Netherlands area. And this particular book is written from the viewpoint of the people in the Netherlands who were treated horribly during the war by the Germans. Just read the Diary of Anne Frank, and you'll know how the Dutch people suffered terribly. Well, the Americans came in like saviors, driving the Germans away, and there was a lull in the action for just a few days. And they settled in to visit with families and stay overnight with families in this Dutch city. And the Dutch people, even though they didn't have much, they shared what they did, and they fell in love with their boys. They were horrified, these Dutch civilians, a couple days later to see the U.S. Army trucks streaming back full of dead bodies. The same men that they had befriended and fed them in their homes. This particular city, even today, is taking care of our men's graves. There are 10 Muskegon men in the Netherlands American Cemetery, and from all the years, from 1945 till now, there's a Dutch family that is tending their graves and making sure flowers are added. It may sound a little cruel, but some of those Dutch families care more about our boys than we do. But that's the state of things. All of these men who died, and we're talking about 436, are also online. This is called a Find a Grave Memorial, and this is the one for Pat's dad, with his picture and some information, including where he's buried. 1/3 of American men, or excuse me, Muskegon men who died are not buried in the United States. They're buried or memorialized all over the world near where they died. And every one of them has this kind of picture. Oh, these two little boys, they're in their Navy ship. And when I mention the name, you might know. The man on the right is probably one of the most famous people in Muskegon's military history, Ike Kepler. He was a Navy ace for a period of time. He had the American record for the number of kills. He had shot down 16 Japanese aircraft. On 2 different days, he shot down 4. 4 this day, 4 that day. He became a huge celebrity. We had a whole talk about him earlier, so I won't mention anything more. But I will mention that his brother on the left, named Harry Kepler, whenever the newspaper columnists would interview Mrs. Kepler, she would always say the same thing. I have 2 boys in the Army, or in the military. I have 2 boys in the war. I was very lucky to call up Harry Kepford in Muskegon, and I'd never known anything about him. And he said, "You caught me the day before my 90th birthday." So he was happy to hear from me, invited me over. He was an absolute American hero, completely ignored by the public because of his brother. See, Harry had the Distinguished Service Cross. They didn't hand those out like candy. He received the Silver Star Medal. And my meeting with him is something I will never forget. very meek and mild-mannered man. He said, I gave away all my medals. I said, would you talk to me about what you did? And he told me everything in vivid detail. If you can imagine seeing your own group, your own men being shot at, he said, I just got tired of seeing my men killed, and he by himself went up to the machine gun emplacement, Japanese, and you can't do anything about those unless you get close enough to put a hand grenade in there. So he was approaching, could have been killed easily, and he took out that Japanese machine gun nest. And here I'm talking with a 90-year-old guy, and he's just the nicest old fellow you'd ever meet. You'd never explain or never understand what he did. And it wasn't just that, but he told me other things which I won't go into detail. I was so impressed with him. Bill Root, he couldn't be here tonight, he's out of town. But I'll tell you the story I've heard from him a number of times. He was one of Patton's boys. At the end of the war, he was assigned to occupation duty, which meant he was on guard duty over in Germany. From being shot at and returning fire, he was standing guard, doing virtually nothing all day. So he said to his friends who were also on guard duty with him, he said, I'm going to check out that house over there. It looks like it has some damage. So he went to the house, walked in, American soldier, he had his M1 Garand, and he walked into a room where nobody was. There was a piano. So he put his rifle over here, started playing Lily Marlene. I guess he figured this will make a point with the German family who was probably here in the house. Well, all of a sudden, he hears a voice behind him saying, Was wollen Sie? What do you want? And he says, Nichts, nothing. It was a young lady his age. He was 20 years old. And about the same age she was, a young German Fräulein. So they started talking, and he got ideas. He thought, I'm going to do my best to cement relationships between Germany and the United States. So they sat down, they had a dictionary with German and English, and they tried to learn words and talk. And then he had to go back to duty. He found a rowboat on the Rhine River, seized it, and for 6 Sundays in a row, he rowed across the Rhine River. Now just imagine that. That is a swift current. So he worked because he had a mission in mind. I'm going to heal this situation. Well, we know about that. Her parents did not think much of the plan. There was never any talking between, but they always made sure that somebody was there in the room with them. He was so frustrated. He said, one time I got her all the way upstairs, and then up comes the maid. Unrequited love. Never to be forgotten, but always to be thought about. The mission was unfulfilled.